Dungeon Reaper. A light novel by Bloodmoss. Chapter 5. The New Normal. Cain's first sensation was the feeling of being just right. His gangly limbs stretched and bent with ease, his movements fluid in a way they'd never been before. Gone was the awkward stumble of a short, stocky frame. He was taller now, his body wiry and powerful. As he opened his eyes to the gritty, rain-soaked street of Crystalgate, everything felt brighter and sharper. "Whoa," he muttered, his voice deeper yet strangely unfamiliar. He pushed himself off the wall he'd been leaning on, marveling at the ease with which his longer legs carried him upright. What the hell? Across the alley, a stunningly beautiful blonde woman in a sharp leather jacket leaned against a dumpster. Her arms were crossed, and her piercing blue eyes watched him with an amused glint. "Enjoying yourself?" she asked. Cain froze mid-stretch. "Wait, who are you?" The woman rolled her eyes. "Of course you don't recognize me. It's me, Tara Windstorm. Class C adventurer. Remember?" He blinked, confused. "No. Should I?" She pushed off the dumpster and walked closer, her boots echoing against the pavement. "Last time we met, you were Keith. And then Cain. But now you're someone else, apparently. New name, new face, new everything." Cain rubbed the back of his neck. "Shaniqua." Tara snorted. "Nope. Try again." "Maria?" Another head shake. "Wrong again. Try going bigger." Cain frowned, frustration bubbling. "Tobias?" "Third time's the charm," Tara said with a grin, giving a little twirl to show off her form. "When we got the chance to reinvent ourselves, I decided to go all out." "You, Mr. Grim Reaper vibes." "Me? I'm fabulous." Cain's jaw worked up and down as he tried to process what he was seeing. "But you're so unexpected," she said, her grin widening. "Yeah, well, not all gays are queer, noob. Get over it." Cain blinked at a loss for words. Tara extended a hand toward him, palm up. "Now, let's see that shiny new adventure idea of yours. The system's been upgraded in the 4 years you've been out. I'm curious what death cooked up for you." With a flick of his wrist, Cain summoned his aid's stats. The familiar interface bloomed into existence, but this time it was sleeker, with a faintly metallic sheen. He sent the profile to Tara and she concentrated, curiosity plain on her face. Dungeon Regulation and Oversight Bureau, DRB. Adventure Registration Information. Legal name, Cain Rose. Registration ID, DRB, E1031306666. Affiliation, Guild Certified Adventurer, Hollow Blade. Rank, Class E. Attribute score, Strength 50, Stamina 50, Speed 50, Magic 50. Aptitudes and flaws. Registered merits. Physical proficiency, average strength, stamina, speed, and magic compared to Class E adventurers. Analytical reasoning, demonstrates creative problem-solving in non-standard scenarios. Resilience, shows moderate psychological resilience under pressure. Registered flaws. Physical proficiency, average strength, stamina, speed, and magic compared to Class E adventurers. Combat inexperience, minimal training and no verified field achievements in dungeon clearing missions. Skill assessment. Ethereal transference allows the user to shift into an incorporeal state, phasing through physical obstacles and evading attacks. Draining grasp drains physical and magical strength from targets upon contact, weakening them while temporarily enhancing the user. Spirit Blade summons versatile spectral weaponry, capable of shifting between forms such as a sword, hammer, or scythe, tailored to the combat scenario. Performance record, no verified dungeon completions. Behavioral note, exhibits a tendency toward procrastination and overcompensation in social and professional scenarios. Employment status, currently affiliated with Hollow Blade Guild. Tara whistled low, clearly impressed. "Damn, Cain, you're officially balanced mediocrity." Congrats. Thanks. I think, Cain said, squinting at the readout. Tara clapped him on the back. Don't take it personally. Everyone starts at the bottom. But here's the thing. Reapers advance a little differently than the living. For them, training and dungeon runs make a difference. For us, it's all about harvesting souls for death. That's our whole purpose. Death made sure the rewards are tied to doing the job. Cain frowned. So, no matter how many traps I dodge or goblins I fight, I'm not leveling up? Tara shrugged. Not unless you're reaping. That's the gig. Souls power us, keep the Reaper system running, and make us stronger. Cain hesitated, then asked, have you ever seen death? Like, the big guy himself? Tara's confident grin faltered for a split second, and she looked away. Not directly. But one time, in the in-between, I got uncomfortable. Like, piss myself uncomfortable. And then Shaniqua came out of the back room, looking, well, like she'd been involved in something. Cain tilted his head. Above your pay grade? Tara's grin returned, sharp and knowing. Exactly. Now let's get moving. Orientation waits for no Reaper. As they walked through the busy streets of Crystalgate, Cain's nerves grew with every step. The Hollowblade Guild had been his first real opportunity, but the memory of its last members weighed heavily. The entire team was gone now, except for Penny, the youngest member and sole survivor. Tara seemed to sense his unease. Look, I read your file. I know what happened at Crystalgate Cathedral. But you can't afford to dwell on the past. Cain Keith, whoever you were, he's dead. Cain Rose is what the Reapers need. The Hollowblade Guild is the top E-rank team in the area now. Your job is to keep them going, reap souls, and prevent others from ending up like your old crew. No pressure, Cain muttered, his hands tightening into fists. Tara smirked. Relax. You've got skills, and we'll make sure you're ready. Just remember, it's not about proving yourself anymore. It's about making sure you make it back alive. Cain nodded, her words resonating. As they approached the Hollowblade HQ, a mix of anticipation and dread filled him. His second chance had begun, and this time, he wouldn't waste it. Cain stepped into the Hollowblade Guild HQ, his heart thudding unevenly. The building had clearly seen better days. The peeling paint and creaky floorboards gave it a lived-in feel, but not in a comforting way. It was more like a perpetual fixer-upper that no one had the funds or energy to fix up. Behind the front desk, Penny Hollow was exactly as he remembered her, sharp-eyed, smirking, and radiating the kind of confidence that dared anyone to question her ability. Her auburn hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her boots were propped casually on the desk. She looked up, and her eyes widened in genuine surprise when she saw Tara. Well, damn, Penny said, sitting up straight and swinging her feet to the floor. You're Tara Windstorm. A Class C adventurer. What are you doing here? Tara flipped her hair with theatrical flair and gestured dismissively toward Cain. Introducing this one to his new guild. Believe me, it's no special case, I just lost a bet. Cain blinked. Wait, what bet? Not important, Tara said flatly, crossing her arms. She turned back to Penny. He has no accommodations, no transportation, no income, basically a lost cause. But someone, somewhere, thought he'd fit in here. That's all I know. He's your problem now. She glanced around the shabby HQ like it was the least notable place in existence. I'm supposed to go on his first dungeon run, so let's get this over with as soon as possible, yeah? I have important things to do. Penny's smirk twitched, and she nodded. Yeah, I can see that this is life or death level stuff for you. She turned to Cain. You're already accepted, so the paperwork's just a formality. And heads up, we don't have housing, but there's an old beater in the back. If you're handy with a wrench, you might be able to get it running. Or you can sleep in it until you figure something out. Cain sighed. Paperwork again? Feels like I just did this yesterday. Penny reached for a clipboard, her smirk firmly in place. Paperwork waits for no one, she said, almost automatically. Cain's mind flashed to Griffin's gruff voice and the rain-streaked windows of a van long gone. Neither does death, Cain said quietly, the words slipping out like a reflex. The air in the room shifted. Penny froze mid-motion, her fingers tightening around the clipboard. Her smirk vanished, replaced by an unreadable stillness. Her jaw clenched slightly as her eyes flickered downward, avoiding his. She inhaled sharply through her nose and set the clipboard down with deliberate care. Without a word, she turned, grabbed a set of keys from a hook, and tossed them to Cain. "Here," she said briskly, her voice clipped. "Not even sure if it runs, and you might be better off walking." Cain caught the keys, frowning as his stomach twisted. His eyes fell on the worn emblem etched into the metal. His heart skipped a beat. "You still have this?" The words escaped before he could stop them. Penny turned slowly, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Cain scrambled to recover. "I mean, this is an old classic key. A Geo Metro. You don't see these much anymore." Tara snorted. "There's probably a reason for that." She stepped back toward the door. "Well, I'll leave you guys to it. Here's my info." She flicked her wrist, and her aide sent a contact ping to Penny's system. "Don't call unless he's ready." With that, she swept out of the room, her heels clicking against the worn floorboards. Cain looked down at the keys again, his chest tightening with a mix of nostalgia and dread. This was his car. But how? The questions buzzed in his mind as Penny watched him carefully, her guarded expression hiding painful memories. "Go check out the car," she said with a dismissive wave. "It might come in handy." Cain nodded slowly and walked toward the back of the HQ, the keys clinking softly in his hand. Cain stepped into the back lot of the Hollow Blade Guild, and there it was. His trusty steed. The battle wagon. The 1994 Geo Metro sat exactly as he remembered it, only worse. The cracked windshield now had a web of smaller cracks radiating from the original impact. One of the tires was completely flat, and the faded paint had surrendered further to rust. Despite its state, Cain's heart swelled. "Still beautiful," he muttered, walking around the car with reverence. "Even more beat up than yesterday, literally yesterday for me." His fingers brushed over the dented hood. "It doesn't matter what's wrong. Nothing on a Metro costs more than $90 to fix. I once swapped out the entire transmission by hand with just a wrench and a screwdriver." He opened the driver's door, which groaned in protest, and slid into the seat. The familiar smell of old upholstery and faint mildew wrapped around him like a warm hug. Grinning like an idiot, he patted the dashboard. "One more for old time's sake, baby." He slid the key into the ignition and turned it, holding his breath. Nothing. Not even a click. "Dead battery," he muttered, laughing softly. Of course. He didn't even bother trying to open the driver's door. Instead, he cranked down the window by hand, a painfully slow process as the mechanism groaned in protest, and reached through to open the door from the outside. It creaked open, and Cain slid out of the seat with a contented sigh. With a resigned shrug, Cain circled to the hatchback. Popping it open, he found his old pillow and blanket tucked exactly where he'd left them. The same blanket he'd used during the nights when he'd lost his apartment and had no choice but to call the battle wagon home. He picked them up, brushing off the faint smell of mildew, and couldn't stop the grin that spread across his face. Behind him, a voice called out. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone so happy to borrow a car that doesn't run." Cain turned to see Penny leaning against the back door of HQ, arms crossed, her expression caught somewhere between amusement and exasperation. "This thing is awesome," Cain declared. "I want to buy it." Penny snorted. "You don't have any money." "I'll work it off," Cain said, gesturing to the car with a flourish. "People don't appreciate classic cars like this anymore." Penny raised an eyebrow. "I don't think anyone ever appreciated classic cars like this." She tapped her chin thoughtfully, her expression turning more serious. "Doesn't matter. We can talk about it later. Right now, you should finish the paperwork so I can get dibs on the next run. With Tara Windstorm going into an E-rank dungeon, we should get priority over anyone else interested." She hesitated, then added, "I'll take your cut from the next job in exchange for the car, and I'll help you get it running, since you like it so much." Cain's grin widened. That would be fantastic. As Penny pushed off the door frame and started heading back inside, she paused, glancing over her shoulder. You know, I think the last guy who owned this car was named Cain. Cain blinked but quickly recovered, his grin never faltering. Well, it must be fate then. He looked back at the battle wagon, his grin unwavering as he patted the hood affectionately. Looks like we're back in business, old girl. A couple of hours later, Cain scribbled his name on the last line of the mountain of paperwork and handed it back to Penny. She gave it a cursory glance before tossing it onto the already chaotic pile on her desk. All set, she said. The run's scheduled for tomorrow. Tara's been notified and will meet us there. We leave at 3 a.m. sharp. It's a 4-hour drive through the country, so get some sleep. You're gonna need it. Cain groaned but nodded. Got it. Penny gestured toward the back hallway. Before you head out, check the storage room for equipment. It's slim pickings, but it's better than nothing. As Cain stood to leave, Penny leaned back in her chair and added, I'll call 2 other members to join us. They need the experience and the pay. Honestly, we'll probably just be watching Ms. Windstorm do her thing, and she'll be there to make sure you don't screw it up. Easy money for everyone except you. Cain raised an eyebrow. Oh, you run dungeons now? Penny's expression hardened slightly. Now? I've been running dungeons for 2 years, and I've been managing this entire guild for 4. You're the only new guy here. Cain winced, realizing he really needs to get a better grip on his lip. Right. Sorry. My bad. Penny smirked. Yeah, it won't take you long to get used to a woman in charge, and if it does then I'll just make sure to let Ms. Windstorm handle that for me. With a sigh, Cain trudged into the dimly lit storage room. The shelves were lined with mismatched odds and ends, most of which looked like they'd seen better days years ago. He picked through the mess, finding a hodgepodge of leather armor and scuffed boots. They weren't great, but they'd do. In the corner, he spotted a dented sword leaning against the wall. He picked it up and gave it a test swing, the blade wobbling slightly in its rusted hilt. Back up, he muttered, strapping it to his belt. His spirit blade would handle the real action. As he examined his gear, his aid chip pinged with a notification. Meet up in the Hollow Blade training room in 1 hour. /Tara.w. Not much time, Cain muttered, quickly gathering the rest of the salvageable equipment. With his arms full, he headed to the training room.